I'm just trying to deal with the situation on my left, but I recognise the honourable member Chris Ockenvold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Why is it, Mr. Speaker, that whenever we have an industrial relations bill, that those on the other side of the House, nice people individually in every sense and in every way, leap into, oh no, they are, but they leap into stereotypical transformation in a gang and assume the various unionist roles so aptly played by Peter Sellers in films like I'm All Right, Jack, when the archetypical trade union shop steward had a nose-to-nose confrontation with the archetypical personnel manager Terry Thomas. The trouble is, Mr. Speaker, this was the 1960s when even I was young. Why do they want to drag us back to the wicked old days of constant confrontation? That's why, the reason why, I can tell them why, they won't disagree. That's how unionists make their money. Mr. Speaker, I cannot understand why they adopt this despicable attitude towards employers, as if employers don't like in any shape or form the very people who work for them, produce their profits and their well-being and their continuance in business. I find myself, and this shows you the extent to which I've been moved by listening to those miserable speeches from the other side, I find myself agreeing completely with my colleague David Bennett. And I'm not sure. Oh yes, it's come to this. And I'm not so sure.
Order! The Speaker will not allow a person addressing the House to be drowned out. This is not a pub. I call the honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can we resolve that? Sir, I feel to
be fair, you may want to advise the member that he may want to withdraw and apologise for that last statement he made in his speech.
Mr. Speaker, I shall ignore
I call the honourable member Chris Ockenvold
that came from the other side of the House, because it's the best way to deal with the comments from that particular member, because I'm sure, on reflection, he won't really mean what he says. But I'm sure I will agree also, and here is the member, I'm sure I will agree with my colleague Cam Calder, who is yet to speak. I was intrigued, though, Mr. Speaker, at Andrew Little's example of each of us belonging to a union, but saddened that even he, a scholarly person dedicated to his profession, and yet so angry, Mr. Speaker, and still locked, his own words, locked in the time of Downton Abbey, and sees labour relationships in terms of civility. I never saw labour relationships in terms of civility when I was a worker, and neither did I when I was an employer. And if Andrew Little is the leader of a trade union, it speaks volumes in terms of attitude. This piece of legislation is good legislation, but will not be seen as such by Labour, or indeed New Zealand First, who want to keep everything the way it is at the moment. Labour wants to drag it back 30 years, and I hesitate to say it, they view it through an old-fashioned pair of spectacles. I would encourage them to freshen up, see the opportunities offered by this excellent bill. And just a final word, Mr. Speaker, for Andrew Little, because he brought up the question, now listen to this bit, Andrew Little brought up the question of Air New Zealand workers wearing mufti. I cannot believe, think back a week, I cannot believe his temerity and duplicitous attitude in his approach, hailing them as heroes, whereas when I, in innocence, wore my 60 stitches to the inch, merino and alpaca hand-knitted, probably by the women of Wanaka, sleeveless jersey, who was it that objected? Who was it that raised the point of order? To you, sir, in the chair. It was Andrew Little. I was deeply hurt to defend him. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good speech. Oh, no, this is
I call the honourable member Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.